Welcome to Wisconsin in Focus. I'm Bruce Walker, Great Lakes Regional Editor for the Center Square. And joining me today is the Center Square's Wisconsin correspondent, Benjamin Yount. I know that you are a huge Brewers fan, and I'm sitting here wearing my Detroit Tigers shirt. So let's talk a little bit of baseball, which some people would say, how is this relevant to the Center Square? But I'm going to let you explain that, Ben.
Yeah, in Wisconsin, there are two stories about the Brewers outside of the actual team performance. We could use, as always, a bit stronger output from our starting pitching. And, you know, when the Brewers don't hit home runs, we don't win. But there are two big stories that everybody's talking about. One is the ballpark and two is the beer. There are quite a number of fans who are upset that the Brewers briefly went to selling beer into the 8th inning because of the pitch clock, and now they've rolled it back to the 7th inning, as they always have. And, you know, many shaking of fists and sighs were released. But this is absolutely a Center Square story because the Milwaukee Brewers and their landlord, the Stadium District, are asking for anywhere between $300 million and $500 million from taxpayers to pay for upgrades, improvements, maintenance at their field, American Family Field. And this is a nugget of the budget conversation. The state lawmakers have been relatively silent on this as of late. Again, so much happens at the Capitol way behind the scenes, and there aren't public hearings. There aren't public discussions. We'll get one side makes a demand, one side makes a concession. The opposition to the Brewers Ballpark funding deal this time came from Milwaukee County. They're not happy with the demand, I guess would be the best word, from the Republicans at the Wisconsin Capitol that Milwaukee and Milwaukee County are going to have to buy in and pay their share of whatever money goes to the Brewers Ballpark. We don't have a price tag for that, but again, if it's $300 million on the low end or $500 million on the high end, you can expect $5, maybe $10 million from each the county and the city, and the county and the city both say they don't have that money. Earlier in the week, there was some county committee meeting where you had unanimous pushback. And Milwaukee County's board is overwhelmingly Democrat. There are just two Republicans on it, but one of those Republicans, Chris Taylor, took exception to the idea that Milwaukee County would have to pay for the Brewers Ballpark.
But you're going to have to do it again to this county, to the taxpayers. Now twice. Last time they took away land sales from the board. What are you going to take away this time to make it happen? At least maybe the residents, it's going to be more vocal than the last time. Because the Bucks were threatening to leave. The Brewers are, threatening in 13 years or how many years it could be that if we don't get something done? Well, that tells me that we have time to come up with a solution. We don't have to have it rammed down us at the same time where you're maybe not giving us the right amount of shared revenue, not even getting 1% with 0.375.
That would be the county's ability to raise their sales tax, 0.375. Now, it's important to share Taylor's comments in order to get to the next comment from Commissioner Ryan Clancy, who is one of Milwaukee County's socialist commissioners.
Well, you know, legislation is bad when both the socialists and the conservatives on the board agree enough to sign on to the same resolution opposing it. And I think we probably have slightly different motivations for opposing it, but I'm going to take this kumbaya moment where we can get it. Public dollars should not be going towards billionaires, especially not if they're blackmailing us with a threat to move to another city.
I don't know that the Brewers have named another city. And again, this is a couple of years down the road. But this shows another hurdle in getting towards an agreement to pay for the Brewers Ballpark. There is a general sense among Republicans at the Capitol that they will do something. Just what? Don't know. Just how much? Don't know. Just when? Nobody knows. But it is going to require a buy-in from Milwaukee County. And this, as we spent time earlier in the podcast talking about, is tied back to shared revenue and tax increases and the universe and the globe and everything under the sun. And this is how we are. But this story is noteworthy for one important reason. This is one of the first times that Milwaukee County leaders have gone on the record against the idea of public dollars for the Brewers Ballpark. And that's an important distinction, not just because they don't want to pay it, but taking a principled stance of public money should not go towards billionaire team owners. That's something that's very conservative. And so it's interesting to see liberals, even socialists in Milwaukee County, adopt that idea. Are they going to have to walk it back? That's why we write the stories. That's, as they say, that's why they play the games.
That is very, very true. Well, return on investment for taxpayers would be what? I mean, there is some modicum of increased economic activity on game days, one would assume. So there's some advantages, externalities that one would recognize from this. Am I correct or am I delusional?
Yeah, there are a handful of spins, a handful of explanations that the Assembly Speaker has offered in the past. One is a sense of pride. You know, the Brewers are one of the smallest market teams in Major League Baseball. And as Assembly Speaker Robin Vos has said, if Wisconsin were to lose any of its professional teams, the Brewers, the Bucks, or the Packers, they're not coming back. Nobody's moving back to a market of Green Bay that has a couple of 100,000 people. It's not Chicago. If the Brewers were to leave, then Southeast Wisconsin would never see professional baseball again. There is, as you said, the externality sort of argument of, well, all these people come in and on game day, they're buying hot dogs and they're buying jerseys and they're buying beers. And if we don't have the team, we won't have any of that money. The perhaps best two arguments from Republicans, one, the taxpayers own this stadium. It's not like the old Kohl Center, which was replaced by Pfizer Forum, which is where the Bucks play. Those were privately owned. Taxpayers are stuck with American Family Field, and if the Brewers were to simply just pick up and leave, taxpayers would be stuck with American Family Field. It would just be, as Voss has put it, an albatross around the neck. The way that this is going to get sold is every time a Major League Baseball player plays in American Family Field, they have to pay state income taxes here in Wisconsin. 162 games, you've got all of the Brewers playing at home for 81, but you've also got all of these visiting teams. And Voss is trying to figure out the math, he's said in interviews, between how much support the state can offer versus how much money Wisconsin brings in by having these millionaires come and play from April through September. And that's going to be the key. That right there, whatever that price tag is, that's going to be the key, as well as we heard a little bit about from Commissioner Taylor, the ability for Milwaukee and Milwaukee County to raise their sales taxes. Because after all, this is just money, civic pride in the Brewers and go crew go. But at the end of the day, this comes down to cash, and Robin Vos is going to be more than willing to allow Milwaukee and Milwaukee County to raise their sales taxes and then turn around and say, okay, now you've got enough money, you can pay your share for the Brewers. Just what the price tag is, just how this is going to be structured, that's going to get worked out. The question is, does this have to get worked out now? Because Vos and Devin LeMahieu, the top Republican in the Wisconsin Senate, have taken the Brewer Ballpark funding plan out of the budget. We in Wisconsin do a budget once every other year, but lawmakers can vote on laws at almost any point. And so by removing the Brewers Stadium deal from the budget, it releases a little bit of pressure this year and opens up the opportunity to have more time to talk, more time to find agreement.
Lots of stuff to consider, and this is a story that we will be pursuing in the weeks to come, and perhaps maybe well into next year. So listeners can keep up with this and more at thecentersquare.com for more stories by Benjamin Yount and box scores from Benjamin Yount. I'm Bruce Walker, Great Lakes Regional Editor for The Center Square. Please subscribe, and thank you for listening.